Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a deep, calm, and realistic breakdown of where Monad, also known as MON, currently stands in the market. This is not hype, this is not noise, and this is definitely not a video where I rush through charts expecting you to stare at the screen. Because like I always say, sometimes the most powerful analysis is the one you can understand just by listening. We're going to walk through Monad's recent price action, its on-chain growth, market structure, dominance shifts, broader crypto conditions, and finally where this project could realistically be heading in the short, mid, and long term. Whether you're already holding MON, watching it from the sidelines, or just trying to understand why people are suddenly talking about it again, this video will give you the full picture without confusion or exaggeration. This is not financial advice. Please do your own research before making any decision. Let's start by grounding ourselves in where Monad is right now. On the daily time frame, MON is up roughly 6.6%, which on its own might not sound extraordinary, but context is everything in crypto. When you zoom out to the weekly time frame, the story becomes much more interesting. Over the last 7 days, Monad is up close to 38%, which clearly shows underlying strength returning to this asset. This move didn't happen in isolation either. It came alongside Bitcoin reclaiming levels above the $88,000 region, which often acts as a psychological and momentum-driven trigger for smaller cap altcoins to start moving again. What's particularly notable here is how Monad has been behaving relative to the broader market. Typically, when the overall market experiences weakness, smaller coins that previously outperformed tend to lag or cool off sharply. Monad, however, has been showing signs of independence, capturing momentum even while uncertainty remains high across the market. That kind of behavior often hints that something deeper is happening beneath the surface. Now, let's talk about one of the most important on-chain indicators, total value locked, or TVL. Monad's TVL is currently sitting around $239 million, and at one point it managed to push into all-time high territory. This is extremely important because TVL doesn't move based on speculation alone. It reflects real capital being deployed into the ecosystem, real users, real applications, and real activity happening on-chain. When TVL grows during a shaky market environment, it tells us that confidence isn't just coming from traders, but from participants who are actively using the network. Next, we need to briefly touch on market dominance because even though it may sound boring, it plays a huge role in determining how altcoins behave. Right now, dominance is hovering around 59.96%, and we recently saw a retest of the 60% level, which marked a new monthly high before pulling back slightly. This retracement is worth watching closely. Bitcoin is still attempting to make a decisive move higher, something I've discussed many times before. We did briefly push toward the $8,900 region, but that alone isn't enough to confirm a broader breakout. Until Bitcoin firmly reclaims the zero point 0.5 Fibonacci zone, there's no reason to get overly excited. However, if Bitcoin does manage to push higher, we would want to see dominance weaken meaningfully. That weakening is what typically opens the door for altcoins like Monad to accelerate. And this is where things get interesting for MON specifically. Let's rewind the clock just a bit. On December 18th, Monad was trading around 1.65 cents. At that time, sentiment around the project was extremely quiet. There wasn't much excitement, there wasn't much interest, and there certainly wasn't a lot of confidence. Fast forward to now, and the price has climbed roughly 53% from those levels. That kind of move doesn't happen by accident. What's even more important is what happened during the drop. When MON fell below the 2-cent support level, it effectively lost its only clearly defined support zone. Below that area, there was no historical structure, no solid price floor. When that happens, price can fall freely, and that's exactly why many investors stayed away. High-risk, high-reward situations tend to scare most people, especially when valuation is low and confidence is fragile. But this is also where opportunity lives. Anyone who understood the risk, did their research, and chose to dollar-cost average into those lower levels is now sitting on gains of over 50%. And this outcome shouldn't come as a surprise if you've been paying attention. Monad's valuation is still extremely small by crypto standards, and in this market, small valuation projects can move very quickly once sentiment begins to shift. It's also important to acknowledge that Monad launched during a very unfavorable period in the market cycle. The overall sentiment has been negative, fear has been widespread, and liquidity has been cautious. Under different market conditions, this project might have received far more attention early on. Despite that, it managed to build a solid foundation, which is why we're now seeing signs of recovery. Looking ahead to the short and midterm, the question becomes, can Monad really make a sustained run from here? And the answer is, it's possible, especially if the broader market begins to heat up again. Monad's market cap is currently around $238.5 million, which is still relatively small. That means it doesn't take an enormous amount of capital inflow to move the price meaningfully. To put this into perspective, let's briefly compare Monad to another project, Nitecoin. Nitecoin is a sidechain within the Cardano ecosystem and represents one of the largest launches Cardano has seen. It's a newer project with a more structured token distribution model, where tokens unlock gradually instead of all at once. This strategic unlocking helps reduce sudden sell pressure and supports healthier price action. Why bring this up? Because despite the same challenging market conditions, Nitecoin was able to reach an $800 million market cap just a few weeks ago, and then double that valuation in a very short period of time. This example shows just how quickly money can rotate into promising projects when conditions align. Now, back to Monad. Even while the broader market remains weak, its TVL continues to grow. That's not something you can ignore. It suggests that once sentiment shifts and liquidity returns, Monad could have room to move. That said, we must stay realistic. Fear and uncertainty are still present across the market, and volatility remains high. Monad was not immune to this, and its price action reflects that. Just a couple of days ago, we discussed Monad around the 2.15 cent level. Since then, the price jumped about 20%, only to get rejected at 2.5 cents. This level wasn't random. It's a key resistance zone that we've talked about before. Price got rejected exactly where expected, and now we're sitting just below that area again. The next test will be crucial. If MON is able to retest and cleanly break above 2.5 cents, that could open the door for continued upside, potentially even reclaiming levels above 3 cents. If that happens, it would signal that momentum is genuinely building, not just bouncing. For traders, especially swing traders, this environment still offers opportunities, even in a downward or uncertain market. And to be clear, when I talk about swing trading, I'm referring to spot trading, not futures or derivatives. With the right entries and risk management, some traders were able to capture 50% plus moves simply by understanding key levels and market structure. Now let's address the long-term outlook, because this is where honesty matters most. Monad's tokenomics are not ideal. Only about 11% of the total supply is currently in circulation. And while there are no major unlocks until November of next year, that supply overhang is something you must factor into your strategy. Often, markets begin pricing in upcoming unlocks 2 to 3 months in advance, which means volatility could increase well before that date. That doesn't mean Monad can't perform well. It simply means that due diligence becomes even more important. Understanding timelines, unlock schedules, and broader market conditions will be key for anyone looking at MON beyond the short term. To wrap this up, Monad is showing early signs of strength at a time when most of the market is still uncertain. A 38% weekly gain, rising TVL, and a strong rebound from low confidence zones all suggest that this project shouldn't be written off. However, resistance levels, tokenomics, and broader market sentiment still matter, and they will continue to shape MON's path forward. If Bitcoin makes a decisive move and dominance weakens, Monad could benefit significantly. But as always, this is a market that rewards patience, discipline, and research, not emotion. Stay informed, manage your risk, and let the market confirm the story before you fully commit. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe for more daily crypto insights. Catch you in the next one. Stay crypto smart.